And hopefully when it stops going round and round and round and round in circles, we go live. Hey, welcome everybody. It stopped going round and round in circles. Morning, Dave. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Welcome to Talking Niagara this morning, everybody. Mike, Gary, Chris, Simone. Yep, we love all you guys coming along and making your comments. And we love all the people who don't make comments, who come along, listen to the show and don't make comments in the background as well. And we know there's a number there.
Hey, well, I'd like to welcome Paul Calamira talking Niagara on YouTube. I caught him on YouTube yesterday. I couldn't get his show during the day. I was doing something, but he did it online yesterday, and so I was able to catch most of it. And I picked it up on YouTube. So I was watching it on a TV while I was puttering around.
Well, your city, your voice, yeah.
Your city, your voice. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We're talking now. Let me take my pulse. Am I awake yet? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Take another slug of coffee.
Okay, so I hope everybody's kind of waking up for the morning. We got to get on with work, etc. Right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, okay. So before we do anything, so we're one day away from the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Yes. And unfortunately,
I was going to say, spare a thought for those people that were prepping up in places like Southampton and Portsmouth that were getting ready for the invasion, who had to keep absolute quiet, had to kind of tiptoe around, even though they were preparing for this invasion that was going to happen overnight.
Yes. And I just like to point out there's a fellow by the name of Bill Cameron who is going to go to the D-Day celebrations. He was at the 70th, the 75th. He was all set up to go to the 85th, and he died last night or the night before last. Oh. And just before he had his bags packed and everything. His two daughters were all ready, got him ready to go. He got a quick illness and he died, and he couldn't go. So a nod of the hat to Bill Cameron, who was 100 years old, and he didn't make the 80th anniversary, but he did in heart. Let's put it that way.
Well, when you think about it, there's less and less of them making the 80th anniversary. It's quite a thing to be. And as I said, I'm just talking about what it would have been like 80 years ago today, going on the day beforehand, if you were in Southampton or Portsmouth or somewhere like that on the, prepping for the invasion.
It's a good thing they were young because, if you're an older guy, if you're old, even if you get into your late 20s and that, you start to know the risks you're about to take.
Oh, yeah.
You know that when you hit that beach, a whole bunch of your buddies are going to get killed or wounded. Maybe you yourself.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So you start to think about that. The young people can get over that. They can always think it's going to be somebody else, not them. But when you get a little older, you start thinking, well, it could be me too.
Yeah. And oh yeah, I know. Yep, I know. All right. Anyway, so and got a few things on today. Okay, let's start with something local. St. Catharines short-term rental bylaw has been categorized as mean. Are you listening, Mike? It's mean, so it supports your viewpoint that there shouldn't be Airbnbs. No, basically it regulates Airbnb, VRBO, and other accommodations being put under review after concerns by city councillors and operators that it's too harsh. They are obviously looked at regulation some time ago, particularly with the growing use of Airbnb, or growing use of, they say Airbnbs, but that's actually the wrong term. Growing use of bed and breakfast for properties and vacation rentals. In fact, actually, it's the vacation rental sector of the market. That's the people. That's the homes that are up for rent that are do not have people living in them. That is the meanest section of that bylaw, if you know what I mean. And the reason I can chime in on this, knowing something about it, is because as a legal person with some knowledge in this area, I'm getting a lot of clients in St. Catharines right now.
Yes. What are they asking?
Well, they're all trying to get their places regulated. I got one which has got a big problem, getting their license, right?
In your opinion, is it a mean law?
I don't. I actually think I think that the law in Niagara Falls is meaner, even if it's not properly applied. I met the guy, an enforcement officer in St. Catharines the other week. He comes across as being tough. I think those guys kind of want to come across as being tough as nails and like the wannabe cop. But I think it's the wannabe that I kind of focus on more than anything else,
Are they really hampering business with the law the way it is, and their so-called aggressive stance?
That's a good question. Clearly, the people who were in this article think so.
Cisco said the bylaw is creating issues for residents who are using short-term rentals as an extra income to be able to afford their properties. He said the short-term rentals are also being held to a significantly higher standard than long-term rentals because the city has no licensing regime for the long-term rental properties.
Yeah, that was
is that a accurate summation then?
Well, actually, that's actually accurate for majority of places in Ontario. You go across Ontario, and I've dealt with I've dealt with cities from North Bay to Niagara Falls, including Toronto. Toronto has what I would consider a ridiculous thing, that if you're going to rent your property out, you have to promise to live in it for 180 days. What you going to do the rest of the 180 days?
There's all kinds of I don't know if things have changed, but definitely 20 years ago, if you were in Toronto, there's all kinds of illegal apartment rentals, all kinds of them, because people could
that kind of market, right?
Because the amount of money it took to bring them up to standard was too tough on people. I knew my ex brother-in-law. Him and his wife had a house, and their basement was an apartment, and they didn't bother getting it all registered. They didn't bother bringing it up to standard.
Well,
they had it was a good clean place to live. It had a bathroom in it, had a little kitchenette in it, and they didn't have to go through the regime basically of getting it registered or anything like that. They just did it under the table, as did so many others.
There's only one city in the province that I know of that actually where you have to license long-term rental properties. Do you know what that city is? It's local.
Niagara Falls?
Nope. Thorold.
Thorold? Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can get a $1,500 fine if you have not registered a long-term rental property in Thorold.
Well, it must have been a real issue in Thorold for them to have come up with that kind of a law. But I do remember in Scarborough, when I was there in Scarborough, there was it was everybody. As a matter of fact, the city looked the other way because there wasn't enough housing for people. So a lot of so-called apartments were being rented out, and the city looked the other way because there was such a dearth of places for people to live.
Yeah.
And for a while there, they just didn't come down on them. I think probably the only thing they should have done really in as a bare minimum is make sure they were safe, make sure they had smoke alarms and means of egress. Other than that, they could look the other way on all the others. But I don't really believe that. I think those are the things that the city should stick their nose into, is means of egress.
Yeah, absolutely.
And alarms. And after that, they can just, I don't know, whatever standards they have. I don't know. But those two are the big ones. Get your fire department in there and make sure that people can get out if it has a fire, and it's got smoke alarms. And after that, I don't know what else you want.
Well, in fact, actually, you think about it, whether it's long-term rental or short-term rental, the ability for people to escape a fire is something that everybody needs and everybody wants. And sensible landlords, sensible short-term rental owners all don't want anybody to die in their property. Right? The last thing in the world they would ever want is somebody dying in their property.
Well, I find a lot of people are a little bit cavalier about this, like they are of seatbelts. Having been in an accident, I will never get into a car without putting a seatbelt on ever again. The seatbelt saved my life. It certainly saved me from crippling injuries. I'll put you that way. Like the car accident I was in cost me 6 months of work, but I was alive, and my injuries were recoverable. And my knee still bothers me, but other than that, and my ribs too still bother me. But other than that, legacy, I was able to live, and that was because of a seatbelt. And I think, and if you've never been in a fire like I have been, believe me, after being in a fire, I had my house, when I had a big house, I had smoke alarms everywhere.
Yeah.
I had them outside. Every bedroom, and I had them in the basement, and I had them in the main room. There's just no way I wasn't going to have smoke alarms after having been in a fire. So if you've been in a fire, then you'll never will go. But if you've never have, and you think that happens to other people, then maybe you won't check your smoke alarm, or maybe if you're a landlord, you won't check the battery or whatever on that smoke alarm, or you won't change it after 5 years, because it's not going to happen to you, So that sort of cavalier attitude. That's why you have to have regulations and people checking these kids.
Okay, so talking about this particular thing about meanness, right? Dan and Anita Skinner, who run an Airbnb on Queen Street, downtown St. Catharines, were fined $2,000. That is, each of the owners of the unit were fined $1,000 each for operating a bed and breakfast, operating a vacation rental without a license. And they basically claimed they didn't know that they needed a license. So the irony here is, if only one of them had owned the property, they would have only gotten $1,000 fine. But because the city levies $1,000 to each owner, it basically is quite a stiff penalty. I would have said that bit of it I know is stiff, because that's exactly what happened with one of the owners that I'm dealing with. We dealt with the license for them, but because there were two owners, they got a $2,000 fine. Whereas another individual that I'm helping through the process, had he been fined, he would have only got $1,000.
Well, there you go.
And the worst of this with St. Catharines is they've decided that fines are dealt with through the AMP system. So there's not really a judge to stand up and make your point about guilt or innocence. You're basically automatically guilty.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah,
That's nice. Automatic kill.
That's
Love
actually
that
what they're
democracy.
doing. It's actually what they're doing in an increasing number of cities. For parking violations are typically done with AMPs, right? Automated monetary policy, monetary penalty system. And what happens is the park, you're guilty, guilty by association because you got the parking ticket, right? No,
That's always nice.
there's no pleading that down. It's just done.
Huh. Yeah. Okay. We just love our democracy, don't we?
Yeah. Well,
Unfortunately, sometimes democracy takes time. Sometimes it's time consuming. That means if you have a means by which to, that means you should have a means by which to contest any kind of judgment against you. And if it's all done electronically and automatically, how does that happen? Mike
makes the point of you could not get mean enough. That's what he's. I said that would be the way Mike would be thinking. Right? We need to start weighing how society is being affected by the greed.
Well, you know what? The only way you're really going to stop this is randomly take a landlord and pull him out on the street and hang him in front of his tenement slum once in a while. That's the only way to bring it in.
Okay, so do that for the basic one that you need to do is do that for the corporate landlords. They're the worst of the landlords.
Oh yeah, but you know what the law is, because corporate landlords got lots of money, they'll be able to get somebody else hanged as a proxy, right? Well, take the guy in Unit 101.
And that's exactly what I was just thinking. They'll elect one of their troubled tenants, won't they?
Yeah.
You
want to get free rent for the rest of the month? Come over here and stand on the scaffold.
Oh, and you got to wear a blindfold.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing we're putting around your neck. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's just a TV show.
Then they'll charge their estate for clearing out the apartment. Oh,
yeah. All right. Well, apparently these fines have actually been helping the city insofar as they've made 491,000 issuing administrative money penalties.
There we go. There we get to the crux of it right there. Moolah. Right? We're getting it. It's scratch. It's all about scratch. The filthy lucre. That's what it's about in the bottom line. So that's not going anywhere soon, anywhere too soon, too fast.
Interesting, of course.
That's making the city that kind of coin, and St. Catharines is way more in debt than our city. They'll find. I'm pretty sure that St. Catharines is just delighted because they'll find senseless ways of spending that money. I'm sure.
Yeah, and the issue about that is that's $491,000 that was not in the budget.
Yeah, that's cool. Will they pay down their debt? No.
Well, even if they would have paid down half of their, even if they would use half of that for paying down the debt, it would be an interesting thing, right? Yeah, but yeah, interesting, so and actually what angers what angers the residents and the people who are doing this is, and I get this, I always laugh at this, when you ring up St. Catharines, you get welcome to Citizens First at the City of St. Catharines.
Yeah, then you put on hold.
And then you put it on hold. Yeah.
This citizen would like to talk to a person.
So put citizens first. Never. Yeah.
Listen to your options. 1, 2, 3. No, I know. I want to talk to a person. No, that option is not available.
I want option 16. Not 1 to 4.
Yeah.
That's actually always the thing about options. I love the way that I was on the thing. yesterday to a court, and for this, press 1, for that, press 2, for that, the other, press 3, and they went through a whole load of options that didn't include mine.
Yeah, of course. I think that's part of the strategy.
So I pressed number 3, which happened to include the thing I was looking for. Hey, thank you, courthouse.
Well, anyway. What do you think about Ford's idea of having a snap election? Do you think he's going to do it?
Interesting. Well, I don't know why he would. Other than adding more years.
Yeah, there's a suspicion out there, strong suspicion, that Doug Ford, according you see the article there, is going to call a snap election. Is it a wise political move, do you think?
That's an interesting question, because the opposition parties say they're ready for it, right?
And do you believe that?
Well, I don't know. No, I don't think they are, to be quite honest, because let's be blunt about it. Opposition parties, Bonnie Crombie doesn't even have a seat yet, and the NDP, the NDP. I think they. Let's put it this way. I'm going to put it this way. I'll be blunt about it, and okay, I'll probably get then sued by Marit Stiles. The NDP don't even know who each other are. Fired one of their caucus, and are just not even prepared for a walk in the park.
Well, I don't know. Marit Stiles looks like she's a looker. I might vote for her just because she's a looker.
Oh dear.
I won't. That would be a wasted vote, though. Because there's no chance that the NDP will come in. Bonnie Crombie, seriously, the two main opposition parties, of course, are going to be the NDP and the Liberals. I don't think they have a hope in hell.
Neither of them are ready for power.
You know what? When Trudeau did his sort of snap election back in the COVID times, when he swore he wouldn't have an election during COVID, and then suddenly he has an election, and suddenly it's okay. I thought he was a complete idiot, but I understand his strategy now. It was a win-win situation for him. He was for a short time there in the immediate aftermath of COVID, Liberal numbers went up. Then they came back down to what they're regularly supposed to do. But Trudeau tried to jump on that moment, that window, and see if he could increase his numbers. But he knew he can't lose, because he knew the NDP would back him up, even if he didn't do too well. So he had the snap election. It didn't work the way he really wanted it to, and got a complete a majority. But he had the NDP backing him up the whole time. So it was a wise move politically. It was a bad move morally, ethically, economically, if you ask me. But politically, it was a wise move, and it gained him a lot of years. He's going right to 2025.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a question.
I just wanted to make the point that is Ford doing the same thing.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I was going to say, yeah. Okay. Maybe let me get through this one first. I was talking with a woman last year sometime, and she was saying, "Oh, what a dish Justin Trudeau is." So if you've got a bunch of women who are voting for Trudeau just because he's a dish to look at, have you got a bunch of men who are voting for Marit Stiles just because she's a dish to look at?
Well,
that's the right way to be voting.
I might vote for her just because she's a dish, because let's face it, it wouldn't make much of a difference in my opinion, because I think it will be a landslide for the Conservatives.
Yeah.
I think it might be, although I disagree with it. I don't like elections that you don't really need, but I think if Ford does call a snap election, it might be a wise move politically. Ethically, maybe not, but definitely a sound political move. And the reasons why they point that out in this particular article, and as you said, like Bonnie Crombie herself doesn't even have a seat. Merritt Stiles is brand new. People don't know them. They're coming off of brutally ineffective parties that they were part of. So the opposition, in a nutshell, is lame as lame can be.
Yeah.
The only thing they could take advantage of is the fact that Ford is calling a needless election, and that's probably about the only weapon they would have.
The one thing I would like about the fact that you'd call an election now is that maybe we can get out of the cycle of having the provincial election 6 months before the municipal election, which I think interrupts the municipal cycle.
Yes,
4 months before the municipal election. That would be one thing that I would appreciate about having an election now, especially if there is no election in especially if we're not facing an election in Ottawa.
Yeah. Now the opposition parties say they're all ready for this. They've expected it. They've got everything ready to go. Now, normally the election would have been 2026, 2 years from now.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's why I pointed out what Trudeau did. He saw the future. He saw that there's going to be a rough road ahead. So try to jump on right now. And one of the reasons is the expectation that the Conservatives will make up the next federal election. And that's probably a good bet right now. But Ontarians like to have the opposite party in power in Ontario. Whoever's in federally in federal power, they like to have the opposite in provincial power. I'm not so sure. I think it's just by chance it works out that way. I don't think they think that way. Ontarians think that way at all. Remember, you had McGuinty and Gwynn winning for a long period of time.
You did,
I mean, they were in for, I don't know, 15, 16 years. I don't know how long, but.
Well, and again, that actually may well be a part of his thinking, that if he holds an election now, and let's say that the federal election happens July, August, September, October next year, although it could happen as early as April, May, that would mean that you've got the federal provincial election out of the way of the federal. Then there's none of that thinking already. People are voting just, the only election that's upcoming then is the federal one.
Well, right now the federal election is coming up and next year. So Ford figures that due to Poilievre, fears that Poilievre could unplug Trudeau's electric vehicle strategy, and which is a cornerstone of the PC economic policy in Ontario. If that happens, then his party's in trouble. So he's doing a bunch of things to hope to sort of worry about that. And he knows too, at 2026, let's say the Conservatives get in at 2025, and of course they're going to have a lot of learning curve things going on. So they're going to make a few mistakes. Very likely they're going to make a few mistakes, blunder here, blunder there. If they're bad enough, it may reflect on Ford's re-election in 2026.
Yeah.
However, I don't think Ford has to worry too much myself, although I think it would probably be an astute political move to call an election in this year. That will annoy people, but the thing that Ford has that no other party has right now is he sells prosperity. That's what he holds out in a province that has been hurting because of all the factories and things that have moved out of here in the last 20 or 30 years. He's selling prosperity. He's saying, let's build that road. Let's build that bridge. Let's build. Let's get these houses built. Let's get these EV plants built. Let's give the money to the developers to get in more EV plants. Let's open up more mines. This is where he's coming from. So who's going to be listening? What does all that say? That says jobs, 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 jobs.
Yeah.
What the liberals and NDP say? Oh, climate change. So we can't build that road. Oh, we shouldn't open that factory. Oh, we shouldn't do that mine. But he's saying jobs, 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 prosperity, prosperity. Do you think?
And actually, in that regard, this would be a very wise move on behalf of Doug Ford.
I think he's going to win either way. Right now, the only thing that's stopping him from doing a snap election this year is the fact that it might backlash like Peterson's did back in the 90s when Peterson finally when he beat out the government of the day back in the early 90s. He tried a snap election and it backfired on him completely, and he lost. And so the summer snap elections in Ontario are not really thought of as too well. But right now he's got a situation where he really does not have much of an opposition. And the amount of people that turned out for the last election in Ontario will give you an idea that those people who normally would have voted for Liberals and NDP didn't see anything to vote for, so they didn't come out to vote. Would a snap election get people angry enough to vote for it out? I don't think so.
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things also to note. The Conservatives won 2 by-elections in Ontario this year. This was Milton, riding in Milton, and another one, I think it was in Toronto. And they won both of them hands down. So that actually, I believe there's also another by-election coming up in June.
There's another thing that's not usually thought of. Now, normally Liberals count on new immigrants to vote for them more than often because they're usually the ones that made the door open wider for the immigrants. However, what it doesn't spell out here though is Conservatives' values are more aligned with new immigrants. So eventually they shift back. What?
Remember, new immigrants won't get to vote for 4 years until they become
let's put it the way. Let me put it a different way. Those people who are immigrants who are here and well established, right? So what you generally get is newer immigrants, right, or people from immigrant families voting towards Liberals, right? They count on that vote. What they don't count on, because the people, hang on, the people that are coming in now come from much more conservative cultures. Yeah. So eventually they're going to shift over to the conservative values, aren't they?
Oh yeah, that was actually something. You see, back in England, one of the things that they always said was, immigrants always vote Labour, and then suddenly there was a change in that back in the 80s and 90s, and immigrants didn't always vote Labour. You know, you have an immigrant prime minister or a prime minister of immigrant descent.
Do you really see the Muslim population of Canada voting for LGBTQ rights?
No, I do not.
No, they would be completely. What about Orthodox Jewish voters? They'd be completely aboard by that. They would vote against that completely. What about people from Mexico, religious people from Mexico, and that normally, or from Central America? Usually, they're much more religious. If I look at the church across the street from me, and it's full of new Canadians. It's not full of Canadians here. It's a Catholic church. Do you think any of them are going to vote for LGBTQ rights or anything like that? If someone comes around and tells them, look, we have this, we can build this mine, we can get this, we could have put a mine in here, we could have a factory in here, that's jobs for your kids. And then somebody comes along and says, no, we can't do that because you know what, we've got this climate change thing going on. So no job for your kid, but guess what? I'm going to have cleaner air. Who's going to vote for that?
Yeah, fair choice, and it actually might well be. It might well be the smart thing to do to hold an election, let's say October 24.
Yeah, I would think you would wait till the fall. That would be a good idea.
Yeah,
1 year previous to now the Trudeau government's going to lag it out as long as they can, unless they see a trend line in the polls that shows them gaining some ground.
Actually,
at that particular time, they may call the election if they see a trend themselves trending up. If they don't see that, they'll wait till the very last minute, very last day. In fact, they have already scheduled it, haven't they?
Yeah, and if we're honest about this, the trend line, one of the trend lines that the federal Liberals would like to look at would be if Bonnie Crombie suddenly takes off in Ontario and fights back against Doug Ford. If she suddenly took, even if they didn't win, but if suddenly they took, like, let's say 5 or 10 more seats.
Well, they already have a strategy where they're going to reduce taxes in certain areas, particularly small business, I think it is.
Yeah.
So that's one of their key right now. Yes, we're Liberals and we're going to reduce taxes because Liberals normally have the reputation of raising taxes.
Yeah.
As raising a lot of.
She wants to halve the small business tax rate from 3.2% to 1.6%.
Yeah. So I don't know if the so it's a good selling point, and I'm sure the Liberals and NDP will have all kinds of. The thing is, will anybody listen to them? Will anybody come out to vote for them? Obviously, the last election, Ford won by a landslide, but did he really win by a landslide when hardly anybody came out to vote?
Yeah,
that's
a key factor.
Yeah. So now, if everybody comes out to vote, more people come out to vote for the next election, will he win? I think he will. Hello, Karen. Karen Fraser's here. Good morning, Niagara. And the Trudeau government is planning on bringing 5,000 people from Gaza specifically. Well, they've been trying that for a long time, Karen. We'll kind of switch there. They're hoping to bring 5,000 people, which is a tiny amount.
None of them are left.
Which is a tiny amount compared to the people they brought from Ukraine. The big problem is trying to get them out. Right now, because it is, 60 to 70% of all homes, I think 60% of homes are destroyed. Many others are damaged. There is no infrastructure. There's no water. There's no electricity. There's nothing there. Food is being hard to come by. Water, anything like that. There's no radio, internet. It's very, very difficult. No foreign journalists allowed. That's the big one. No foreign journalists allowed. If they can sneak you in there, maybe you can get a few, but no foreign journalists allowed, and they're killing the ones they do find. So to get those people out there, that would be fine. I think but the biggest problem is getting them out. There's no means of egress. The Israeli, along the Israeli side of the border, they're not going to let anybody out. Doesn't matter if you put them right on a plane to Canada, they're not going to let them out. Egypt would let them out through the Rafah gate, but the Israeli army is in that Philadelphia corridor right now, which is complicating all manner of supply trucks getting in and out, or people getting out. That's the only place people were able to get out of Gaza is Rafah, and that's all. It's a war zone right now. I don't know how we're going to get those 5,000 people out.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an impossibility. That strikes me very much as an impossibility.
And Canada just doesn't have the clout.
Yeah.
Right. If the United States knocked down doors and said, "Look, I want these 5,000 people out, make it happen," the Israelis would do it.
And how many of these 5,000 people are still alive?
I don't know, but there are 5,000 people. Well, like what, 5% of the population is either killed or injured, something like that.
Yeah,
like it's something insane. You've got all these people that are maimed and eyeless and armless, or just plain blown to bits. They would have to go through Rafah. That's probably the only place they can get them out. And Rafah right now is a war zone. Like, I don't think those people are coming out. Our government's best means is to put pressure on the Israelis to accept their own peace deal. Evidently, that is the word now, that the Israelis actually proposed this deal, which is almost verbatim what the Hamas proposal was, which is almost verbatim what the Egyptian proposal was. But now,
and now that's being adopted by the US, and hey, Freeland welcomes the Gaza ceasefire proposal as well.
Of course, anything to stop that carnage, anything to stop the butchering from the sky or from the tank barrel, whatever, anything to stop it. I'm very saddened by. I don't know if you should go online and see what Bill Maher, whatever that talk show host guy, Bill Maher, he's a complete jerk. He thinks that Palestinians are some kind of lesser human being. I don't know. It's just gross. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
So Karen, thanks for bringing that up. I still don't think it's a possibility. I think the best thing we can do is put a lot of pressure on the Israeli government to accept their own deal.
Well, okay, so let's talk about this one for a moment. Come down. Right. You put this thing in the about the Atlantic. A few days ago, they received heavy criticism for publication of an earlier article that seemed to argue the legality of killing Palestinian children in Gaza.
Yeah, this was a real vomit bag of an article. I started reading it. I couldn't finish reading it. But I did read it actually, and but then I read other articles about it. And what it was, I'm trying to get it right now.
Just to be clear, this is an article by a publication called The New Arab, and it's criticizing an American magazine called The Atlantic. Right. So, and the Atlantic has received heavy criticism over a publication of an article last month that argued the legality of killing Palestinian children, and basically tried to cast doubt on the UN's recent statistics in the Gaza war. But the writer was accused of trying to play down Gaza's devastating humanitarian crisis and potentially justifying violence against citizens and particularly children. That's what this was all about.
It's written by a fellow by the name of Graham Wood. Graham spelled Graeme, Wood. And it was published on May 17th. And it tried to cast doubt on the UN's recent statistics on the Gaza war. Now, the UN, this is a tactic that the Israelis and and those who back the Israelis have been trying from the very beginning, trying to cast doubt on the stats that are coming out of Gaza. However, they always accepted the stats previously. Even in the early part of the war, the Israelis had to admit that their stats on how many they kill are very close to what Hamas has put out in the 5 previous wars they've had. So right now, I think Hamas, if anything, Hamas officials there cannot count how many people are dead, because it's harder to find them all. It's harder to get somebody there to count them. But they put down the names, and there are grotesque publications, and this was one of them. It says it's tried to tell you that it's perfectly legal to kill on these many innocents, because that's the rules of war. You could do that. And it says also in previous articles and previous attempts, particularly by the Israeli pundits, saying, well, it's a 2-for-1, that's perfectly acceptable. That's better than what the U.S. did in Fallujah. We're killing only 2 civilians for every 1 Hamas soldier. So for every Hamas fighter, we kill only 2 citizens. That's really acceptable. That's way better than the U.S. did in Fallujah. The U.S. would, of course, contest that. So that was their justification. Now, just about everybody in the world, everyone, the UN, European Union, the United States, United States, other than the government of the United States, even the government of the United States has issued this, that it is a bloodbath. It's a Butcherville type of thing happening in Gaza right now. And this guy is trying to justify that. He's saying, oh yeah, well, it's perfectly legal to kill these people. And he says in his piece, Wood claimed that the casualty numbers reported by Gaza Ministry of Health and subsequently used by UN were inflated and unreliable. That is hardly the case. The UN, even the United States, has said that they believe those are accurate. They tried to say Hamas reported all the time, but if they go into there, I don't think anyone can deny of these. If anything, it's less than what it actually is, because Hamas officials can't go around and count all the ones that are buried in the rubble.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's actually the big concern here, is that, those numbers, that's the only way in which they're inaccurate, is because they're probably lighter than the reality, because of that ability to, to count them. They obviously, and any situation like war, there's obviously always missing dead, aren't there? There's always dead that get missed off the count.
And I hate comments like this. It is possible to kill children legally if, for example, one is being attacked by an enemy who hides behind them. Well, who's doing the attacking? Yeah. Right? They did one attack in Israel. They killed 1,200 people. Okay. I think about 400 or 500 of them were, over 300 of them were military or police. So if you want to go down to civilians, have killed 800 civilians. How many civilians have they killed in Gaza?
Yeah.
And they have destroyed 60% of the places to live. 60% of housing is destroyed. 60%.
Yeah.
No water, no fuel, no anything. Is that legal? Is that legal?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, very good question. And the interesting thing is about this, the Atlantic, is I've often found them as basically, conservative, yes, but a reasonably balanced conservative publication.
And the timing was pretty bad because anger, this article says anger was further inflamed as the sharing of the story coincided with an Israeli strike on Sunday, which set ablaze a crowded camp in the southern Gaza Strip of Rafah, killing 45 people, including children. I mean, charred them to death. Many of the victims were burned alive.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they do the typical, well, it was an accident. And then that's what Netanyahu says, oh, it's a terrible accident. And normally, if he could have denied it or explained it away, he would have. He had to admit it, though. And groups like Writers Against the War of Gaza denounced the piece, writing in a post, defending child murder is egregious, but the Atlantic has historically defended imperial bloodshed. The Atlantic has some pretty good articles. I'll have to say that for sure. But these are particular writers, and let's make that difference here. The Atlantic has chosen to allow Graham Greene to write an article like that because that's his point of view. And I think, as disgusting as it is, it has to be written because we have to know what is driving this constant murder machine that's going on there in Gaza right now. It's people like that. It's people like that who are justifying it, and people at the top listening to saying, okay, well, we can do that. And I think that's very important for us to know. So it's important that it's published so we know where this kind of attitude is coming from. I just damn well hope that this peace deal goes through and then goes through as fast as it possibly can. Whoever the operatives are, Hamas and the Israeli government, the IDF, and all them others. And I want foreign journalists in there. 50 news agencies wrote a letter to the United States and Israel demanding foreign journalists go into Gaza.
Yeah.
And they were denied. And not only that, in Israel right now, you will not find good quality coverage of that war. It's been censored. It's been censored completely. And that amounts to why the Israelis can't figure out why the whole world is against them on this. Well, it's because they're not allowed to see the war for what's really happening. It's like the United States when they did their when the West went into Iraq, they never allowed any foreign journalist or any journalist at all, except they had to go with the army if they were going to do any coverage. They didn't want another Vietnam.
Yeah.
What happened in Vietnam? Journalists were allowed to freely go around and report the war for what it was really like. That offended most people, and it was the average person that hated the war and demanded its end. That's what they don't want to happen here.
Yeah, and it's the same with many. It's the same with many Western countries. It's like when Britain had the Falklands War back in the 80s, right? All of the journalists were on one carrier and one carrier only.
Yeah. Let me see how many.
There were good reasons for that because, they were stating things like, we counted 25 planes off and 25 planes on. Well, they didn't, if 5 planes were shot down, they did, they switched which carrier the planes landed on.
Here we go. 108 journalists and media workers were confirmed killed in Gaza so far.
Yeah.
103 Palestinian, 2 Israeli, and 3 Lebanese.
Yeah.
Where is BBC? Where is CBC? Where is Reuters? Where are any of them? They're not allowed in, are they?
Yeah, they're not.
No. Don't come and see. And so we don't want resources of journalists in there. We don't want the resources that they bring. And we've got to do something, and we're not going to let them in for a long time. Okay.
Want to get back to something local, Dave. So GM is reassessing. They're taking a second look at the plans to build electric batteries for electric motors in St. Catharines. They're looking at the moment about, obviously, the GM plant in St. Catharines is a propulsion plant, so they're building engines, etc. And they're looking now at the possibility, and looking once again at the possibility of using building batteries there.
Yes, and this is a bit of a disappointment. Remember, Ford Canada has reversed or at least delayed its operation of electric vehicles. Electric vehicles basically have a motor. They have a drive module, which kind of collects all the power and distributes it. And it has a transmission. So the car itself has a transmission, a drive module, an electric motor. There's not much to it. A lot less than is a combustion engine. This means there's going to be less jobs, because to make a combustion engine takes a lot more than an electric engine does. Electric motor and this
that's what the St. Catharines propulsion plant makes, a V6 engine, 6-speed transmission lines. But of course, with the advent of the electric vehicle, a lot of those things are being, being phased out.
The problem is the market. They've found that the market, the expected market, has already gone down 3%. So 14 to 15% of people who surveyed were considering buying an electric vehicle. That was, I think, just last year. Now it's already down to 11%. So there's a drop already in perceived ability of electric car to actually meet its market, or overdo its market.
Yeah.
So and like I said, in April, Ford has already, back in April, have already talked that they're going to reduce their delay a lot of their electric vehicle stuff. Now it's the turn of GM. The anticipation here, you got to wonder, what is it with the market? Is it because people just don't have the money? Is it because of Chinese competition? The Chinese are dumping a lot of electric vehicles. I don't know if they're dumping them in Canada right now, but the marketing for GM and Ford might think they're not ready for this. Is the grid ready for it? Is there enough electrical supply delivered? Certainly for 10 or 15% of the population want to drive electric cars. Yeah. I can tell you one thing, they're coming, because I see them all over the place.
Yeah,
I've never seen so many Teslas in my life.
I think the challenge with electric vehicles and why people are not wanting them is because people are concerned about them is because electric vehicles are more expensive to purchase. If you're buying your car and it was a $25,000 car, with a V6 engine in it, it's a $40,000 car if it's an electric vehicle. But as you say, that's and the weird thing about that is it's got less components in it than the $25,000 car. Now, the other question is, are we really sure that we can go long distance in it? Can I drive to California in it and charge it up on a regular interval?
Well, yes, you can, because I have a friend that did that.
But what I'm saying is that's a question in people's minds that they don't have an answer to. Whereas with a gas vehicle, I can set off to California at an instant's notice and know that I can fuel up along the way.
That didn't stop anybody from buying gas vehicles when there wasn't gas stations back in the early part of the 20th century.
Yep.
There were sporadic gas stations here and there. Even in the 50s, if you went to Northern Ontario, you had to be pretty careful of what gas you bought and where you bought it, because the gas was foul sometimes. It had water in it. Even then, even in the 50s and early 60s, gasoline wasn't even completely reliable completely reliable, generally reliable, but not completely reliable, and that was right here in Ontario.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that is a
yeah.
fallacy. I think I
I'm
do
not saying.
understand
See,
why
I'm not
people.
saying that
I
you
do
can't.
understand why people have that in their mind,
Yeah.
but I think that would be quickly alleviated.
I'm not saying that you can't drive to California in an electric vehicle. I'm saying that people perceive you can't.
Well, that's what I just said too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perception is the perception is something that will be completely will quickly alleviated.
Yeah.
Particularly when you talk to people like my buddy who drove to California. He drove down to the border of Mexico from Vermont, and then he drove to California to see his sister.
Yeah.
You know, I was with him in a car, and we went from Vermont to Long Island. There was lots of charging stations along the way. It's just a matter of where you go. And obviously, when gas vehicles first started coming in with combustion engine, naturally the gas stations would be closer to the urban centers, and it took a while for them to spread out. And I think it's pretty much going to be exactly the same thing.
Oh, I know. I know.
The big question, of course, is where is the power going to come from?
Yeah,
that's a constant issue, and they haven't adequately answered that. If you ask me,
that is true.
Where is that power going to come from?
And again, though, the use of plants in Ontario building parts for electric vehicles is an important aspect of this. So, so if you're going to be building batteries or whatever you're building, batteries or the electric motors or whatever, it's an important aspect that something like the GM plant, that the potential always is there that in future they won't be building the V6 engines. They'll be needing to translate those into electric vehicle motors.
The issue right now is, I think General Motors and Ford know that market's coming.
Yeah,
it's just that it isn't here yet. It's like Xerox. I think I'm trying to think of a company was like that, like Xerox. I think Xerox was one of those companies that came up with that copy machine, and it didn't take off at all at very first because nobody thought they needed it. Once it took off, then they couldn't build enough of them. But it took a while to break into the market. Apple and their iPhones is another thing. Nobody thought that Apple was going to break the market like they did. Kodak and their collapse is another example going the other way, where they couldn't accept new technology and saw the lag of it as motivation to.
Well, that's the same.
To a sort of a half-assed kind of mixed type of. They try to target the older market with middle-aged senior market that had more money for typically bought more cameras, and it failed miserably. So I think it's just a bit of a lag time here. And with the amount of investment that's gone into this, you can pretty well figure that the feds and the Ontario provincial government are going to do a high-pitched selling job on this. They're going to try to get as many charging stations out there as possible.
Talking about charging station, what the heck is it with that one at Morrison and Dorchester? The new one they put in is still under wraps. Hasn't been unwrapped. Hasn't been opened yet.
Yeah, I don't know that. It's probably
it's been finished by the looks of it for at least 3 months.
Yeah, so I don't get it. I don't know if it's in anticipation of electric cars coming later. Right now, but they're pretty complicated. Like, in order to get a high-speed electric charge, you have to have an extraordinarily good cooling system, because you cannot add that kind of a charge without a cooling system. Otherwise, you're going to burn all your wires and everything because of the currents are so hot. So in order to do a high-speed charge, you have to have a cooling system around the cable.
It makes sense for me. It makes sense to me that the places you put electric vehicle rechargers are actually around all the restaurants and the like.
Yeah, there isn't really much that way there. Again, well, there's Boston Pizza and stuff across the street like that. But typically you want something a little closer.
Yeah, you'd want,
because it's going to take you 20
well,
minutes
it's like
to charge
there is
your car.
one. There's one at the Swiss Chalet on Montrose and Thoroldstone as well.
That Swiss Chalet is closing.
And that's the irony about it, is because there is actually charging stations there already.
Yes. So I don't know basically what to do. I anticipate the electric car will take off sooner or later. Right now we're in pretty much in a funk economically. People don't have money. They don't really. They know what a combustion car is, like you said before. Yeah. They know what a combustion car is. They know the expectations they can get. There's a fear factor with electric car. Am I going to be able to get it charged? Am I going to be able to get it fixed? Fixing it's going to be the easy part because there's nothing much to it. But am I going to get it fixed? Is it going to be efficient? How long is that battery going to last? There's all kinds of issues like that people aren't yet.
And it's not that those, you see, it's more the fear factor than the reality.
Yeah, I expect so. Yeah. I think also the economic situation we're in right now.
But again, if you live in an apartment building like you do, how would you charge your car? If you got an electric vehicle, how would it charge? You can't put I can put an outside, I could put an outside plug, socket into my wall, through my wall, and have a plug socket, have it plugged in. I can charge it every day. How would you do that?
I would do what I do with my gas car. I don't have a gas pump in here either, right? So what do I do with my car? I go to the gas station. What I'll do with my electric car is go to a charging station.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
The only thing is, if you do have a house, you can, as a matter of convenience, you can put a 220 system into your car, into your house, and then plug in it. A 120 system will get you so many miles, not very many, but what you want is a 220, and then you'll be able to get a charge.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You put a 220 system in there, and then maybe you can charge your car all weekend, and you've got enough for going to work next week.
I think the vast amount of people will be just going to the charging stations. And the reason why I think so is the charging station can charge it quickly. Even a 220 takes time. It'll be overnight and stuff like that. And that's fine. You can do that. But again, I think as a matter of convenience, people are just going to go to the charging station because you can get it charged fast. In 20 minutes, you can get 600 miles worth of driving, I think, something like that on a Tesla anyway.
But again, if you can, let's say that your average daily journey was 50 miles or 50 kilometers, and you were charging it overnight, and you could get 80 kilometers out of it. Well, that's more than enough for what you need.
Let's see. I think a quick charge. Let me see how much a quick charge. I think maybe it's 300. Maybe I exaggerated there, maybe inadvertently. Let's see, what does it charge for the average?
Anyway,
how long to charge car Tesla? 220 volt. It just gives you 36 to 50 hours at a 110 volt. And it will take at 220 about 0.6 hours, I don't think, at 440 volts.
6 hours.
Anyway, yeah. So I don't know, where are you? I don't know. Mobile connectors, multi-building, on the road, superchargers, destination. Oh yeah, it goes and goes. But what I was trying to find is how many hours. How long does it take to charge a Tesla 100%? Full 10 hours, then it's on a 222.
Okay, so 10 hours to charge a Tesla on a 220 volt is what I heard there.
Yeah.
That's reasonable. Okay. So that basically means I can come home from work. I can come home from work yesterday, charge up my Tesla and be off in the morning, on a 10-hour trip, head to New York, for example.
Okay, here it is. Like I'm going with Tesla right now.
Yeah.
The
I know.
smallest Tesla battery, the Model 3, a charge will get you 262 miles. The highest range Tesla offers 405 miles. Now, of course, these are just like gas. If you're in a gas engine, if you're going up and down hills, you're going to use a lot more gas.
Of course.
And the same thing with battery. Going up and down hills will suck your battery up. And I think if it's very, very cold too, you're going to get less out of your charge. So there's different things happening here than a typical combustion engine. But if you're going to get 400 miles on a charge, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I think we can leave it at that point. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
the point being is that inevitably they're going to be converting these propulsion plants to some form of electric vehicle propulsion.
Yeah. Eventually they'll come in and that the idea of power generation is another big thing that's going to happen. As you know, as we reported, I don't know, about a month or so ago, I forget, my timing's not so clear in my head these days, but earlier on, somewhere in the last month or two, we reported on the expansion of a power station or at least I mentioned it, the nuclear power stations.
Yeah.
That may be in anticipation. It's going to be, you're getting 400,000 immigrants every year coming into Ontario. You're going to get more power use just because there's more people. So, but if people start to turn towards electric vehicle, the demand is going to be even higher. So, we'll see how the Ontario responds to that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
All right.
I think we can call it quits at that point.
Without further ado, I bid you